Part 1. Introduction. Hey everyone. I never thought I'd be one of those people who ends up posting here, but I guess life has a way of throwing curveballs. I'm 34 and my wife, let's call her Emma, is 32. We've been married for 7 years and until recently I thought we were pretty solid. I won't say everything was perfect, no marriages, but we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. Emma and I met through mutual friends in our late 20s. She was fun, witty, and had this contagious energy. I fell hard and before I knew it we were planning our future together. We built a comfortable life, adopted a dog, traveled when we could, and even talked about having kids someday. But then things changed. It started subtly, so much so that I didn't even question it at first. Emma became distant. Not cold, but preoccupied. She was always busy with work or just tired when I tried to connect with her. She started spending more time on her phone, smiling at messages she'd never explain. And the girls' nights? Suddenly they were every weekend. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I figured maybe she was stressed. Maybe she needed some space. Everyone goes through phases, right? But the gut feeling wouldn't go away. And as much as I hated to admit it, the woman I loved didn't feel like my wife anymore. Part 2. The first signs. Looking back, the signs were all there. I guess I just didn't want to see them. Emma used to be pretty open about her day. She'd come home, kick off her shoes, and chat with me about everything, work drama, funny moments, even what she had for lunch. But then, the conversations dried up. When I'd ask how her day went, I'd get the same generic, it was fine, or busy, you know how it is. Her phone became a permanent fixture in her hand. She was never the type to be glued to it, but suddenly she couldn't put it down. I'm not proud of this, but I peeked over her shoulder once, just a quick glance. She was smiling at something. When I asked what was so funny, she brushed it off. Just a meme, she said. But she never showed me the meme. Then there were the girls' nights. Emma has a close group of friends and they've always been tight. But these outings became more frequent and the excuses more flimsy. One night, she claimed they had a last-minute wine tasting that she just had to go to. Weird, since none of her friends ever mentioned anything about it on social media. I even asked her best friend, Sarah, about it once. She blinked, clearly confused. Wine tasting? No, I didn't go. I think I was at my parents' that weekend. That was my first real jolt of suspicion. But I still clung to the hope that maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe I was being that paranoid husband who saw problems where there weren't any. But then she started caring more about her appearance. And I'm not talking the usual I want to feel good kind of thing. It was different. She bought lingerie I had never seen her wear. New perfume. She started getting her nails done every 2 weeks, something she had never been into before. When I complimented her, she barely acknowledged it. There was also the emotional distance. Our sex life, which used to be passionate and playful, had become transactional. Like she was checking a box. No more playful kisses in the kitchen. No more lingering looks. Just a quick peck on the cheek, followed by a distracted love you. But the worst part? The lying. Small ones at first. One night, she told me she was meeting Sarah for drinks. Something felt off, so I texted Sarah just a casual, "Hey, hope you guys are having fun." She replied almost instantly. "Sarah, what? I'm at home. Didn't make any plans tonight." My stomach dropped. I didn't confront Emma that night. I couldn't. I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe Sarah forgot. But deep down I knew. Something was happening. And soon I wouldn't be able to ignore it. Part 3. The discovery. I wish I could say I stumbled upon the truth by accident. Maybe a forgotten text message or an out-of-place receipt. But no, it wasn't that simple. The suspicion ate at me. Every time Emma smiled at her phone or stayed late at work, I felt that gnawing pit in my stomach. It became unbearable. I tried to push the thoughts away, convincing myself I was just being jealous or insecure. But even the strongest denial couldn't hold up against the truth. One night, Emma had her usual girls' night planned. She left around 7 p.m., kissing me goodbye like nothing was wrong. I waited an hour before the temptation got the best of me. I checked the location on her phone. Yes, I know it's invasive. I'm not proud of it. But when trust is shattered, desperation takes over. And guess what? She wasn't at any bar. She wasn't at a restaurant. She was parked at a random apartment complex across town. My heart pounded. I stared at the blinking dot on the map, hoping, praying that it was just some kind of glitch. Maybe she had car trouble? Maybe she was helping a friend? I kept giving her excuses she didn't deserve. But I needed answers. I jumped into my car and drove, my hands trembling on the wheel. Every mile felt like an eternity. My mind raced through every possibility. Maybe I'd show up and find her doing something completely innocent. Maybe I'd laugh at myself for even thinking she could betray me. But that didn't happen. When I pulled into the complex, I spotted her car immediately. It was parked right next to a sleek black BMW. I didn't know whose it was at the time, but I would soon enough. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I walked towards the building, finding the entrance door unlocked. It felt surreal, like I was watching myself from the outside. I climbed the stairs, heart pounding louder with each step. Apartment 3B. That's where her location pinned. I hesitated. I wanted to knock. I wanted to scream. But instead I listened. And I heard laughter. Hers. That soft, carefree laugh I hadn't heard in months. Except it wasn't for me. Then a man's voice. Low. Confident. And far too familiar. It was her coworker. I didn't know much about him, let's call him Eric. I remembered Emma mentioning him in passing. Oh, Eric said the funniest thing today. Eric helped me with that project. Always so casual. So harmless. Except now I knew better. I stood there frozen, listening to the muffled sound of their voices. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. My imagination filled in the blanks. And then the unmistakable sound of moaning. That sound shattered everything. I stumbled away, barely able to breathe. My vision blurred, but I managed to get back to my car. I don't even remember driving home. The world spun, and the only thing I could hear was that awful echo, her laugh, his voice, their betrayal. I wanted to confront her right then and there. Kick down that door. Make her see what she had done. But I didn't. Something held me back. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was the sliver of denial still clinging on. Instead, I went home. And I waited. She came back around midnight, her hair slightly tousled, that same fake smile plastered on her face. Girls' night was fun, she chirped, acting like she hadn't just shattered my world. And that was when I knew. The woman I thought I knew was gone. But the worst part? The confrontation was yet to come. Part 4, the confrontation. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Her smile. His voice. The apartment. Emma, on the other hand, slept like a baby. She climbed into bed next to me, wrapped her arms around me like she hadn't just spent the evening screwing her coworker. I lay there, stiff as a board, while she murmured a half-hearted "love you" before drifting off. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her awake and demand answers. But I waited. I needed to be sure I'd keep my composure, or what was left of it. Morning came, and Emma acted like nothing had happened. She was unusually chipper, humming in the kitchen as she made coffee. I'm thinking of doing brunch with Sarah next weekend, she said casually. I stared at her. The sheer audacity. Sarah? I said, my voice flat. She nodded, not catching the venom behind my words. Yeah. Why? I leaned against the counter, gripping my mug tightly. Funny. She told me she was home all night when you said you were out with her. Her face paled. It was quick, but I caught it. A flash of panic. She recovered quickly, though, plastering on that fake, defensive smile I was starting to hate. Oh, she said, brushing her hair back like it was nothing. She must have forgotten. We didn't stay out late. Where were you? I asked, cutting straight to it. That smile wavered. I told you. With Sarah. Are you seriously accusing me of something? She tried to sound offended, like I was the one out of line. Classic deflection. I wasn't buying it. I checked your location. Boom. Her mouth opened, then closed. You, what? You weren't at a bar. You were at some apartment complex. 3B. I spat out the number like it burned my tongue. So, who lives there, Emma? Silence. For a moment, she just stood there, blinking. Then the lies started pouring out. You're being paranoid, she snapped, crossing her arms like I was the one in the wrong. I was visiting a friend. God, do you think I'm cheating just because I have a life outside of you? A friend. I scoffed. You mean Eric? That's when she froze. Dead still. Her face twisted into something between shock and panic. She knew. She knew she was caught. But did she apologize? Did she show even a shred of remorse? No. Instead, she doubled down. Oh, so you've been spying on me now? She laughed bitterly, but it was hollow. Is this what our marriage has come to? You're tracking my phone like some psycho. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Don't turn this around on me, Emma. I wouldn't have to check anything if you weren't sneaking around. You're crazy. She shook her head, grabbing her bag like she couldn't wait to get away. I'm not doing this with you. Tell me the truth, I growled, blocking her path. Just say it. She glared at me, eyes full of resentment. Fine, she hissed. You want the truth? Eric's a friend. We hang out sometimes. Maybe I didn't tell you because I knew you'd freak out like this. God, you're so controlling. Controlling? Right? I let her storm out, the door slamming behind her. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Because while she thought she could lie her way out of this, I had a plan. And the truth? I was about to dig it all up. Part 5, The Investigation. After Emma stormed out, I sat in the silence, replaying the entire conversation in my head. Her lies were so blatant, so pathetic. But what really ate at me was how easily she flipped the narrative, like I was the bad guy for wanting the truth. But I wasn't about to let her gaslight me into submission. Not this time. I needed proof. Concrete proof. The first thing I did was check her phone records. Emma and I shared a phone plan, and while I never thought I'd need to snoop through it, I had no choice. The bill showed dozens of calls and texts to one number, Eric's. 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 11 p.m. Some calls were over an hour long. Others were just a few minutes, probably their pathetic attempts to check in between their little meetings. It made me sick. Next, I checked our shared credit card statements. While Emma claimed she was out with the girls, I found charges for luxury hotel rooms. The kind of places we'd never even stayed at for our anniversaries. Expensive dinners. And the kicker? A jewelry store. A fucking jewelry store. He wasn't just screwing my wife, he was buying her gifts. And she had the nerve to act like I was imagining things. But I wasn't done. I needed more. I reached out to Sarah, who'd always been a friend to both of us. When I told her what was going on, she was furious. Apparently, Emma had been using her as a cover for months. She'd send me random texts like, "Hey, if anyone asks, we were out last night," Sarah said. I didn't think much of it at first. I thought she just didn't want to hurt your feelings if we were drinking or something. Yeah, right? I thanked her for the honesty, but I wasn't stopping there. I needed eyes on them. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator. I never thought I'd sink to that level, but desperate times call for desperate measures. The guy was professional, ex-cop, experienced in these types of cases. I handed him everything I had, the phone records, the credit card charges, even the address of apartment 3B. It didn't take long. A week later, the investigator handed me a folder thick with evidence. Photos, timestamped reports, even videos. Emma and Eric weren't just having a one-time fling or an emotional connection, this was a full-blown affair. They met during lunch breaks, after work, sometimes during those so-called girls' weekends. And the worst part? The smug looks on their faces. They weren't worried. They thought they'd never get caught. But they were wrong. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. If Emma wanted to play games, fine. I'd make damn sure I was the one who finished them. Part 6. The Setup. After the private investigator handed me the evidence, I felt something shift inside me. The sadness? It was still there. The humiliation? Absolutely. But now there was something else, resolve. Emma thought she could humiliate me behind my back and get away with it. She thought I'd never find out. But now, I was the one holding the cards. And I was going to play them. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I wasn't sure if I wanted a divorce yet, but I needed to know my options. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me in court. The lawyer advised me to gather more evidence, especially anything that showed how she was using marital assets to fund her little escapades. Turns out, all those hotel stays and dinners? Yeah, they weren't just evidence of infidelity, they were financial fraud. I made copies of everything. Phone records, credit card statements, even screenshots of Emma's texts with Eric that the investigator managed to get. I kept them locked away, both physically and digitally. If Emma tried to deny anything, I'd have the receipts. But I wasn't done. I wanted her to confess. I wanted to watch her squirm. And I had the perfect plan for that. The dinner invitation. A few days later, I casually suggested we have a date night. Emma, to my surprise, agreed. Maybe she thought I was falling for her lies, that I was trying to fix our marriage. She even smiled when I made the reservation at one of her favorite fancy restaurants. But I wasn't just planning a dinner. I was planning a show. The day of the dinner, I sent a text to Eric. From her phone. "Hey babe, let's meet at Lorenzo's tonight at 7. I can't wait to see you." And just to twist the knife a little deeper, I added, "Wear that blue shirt I love. You know the one. Perfect." The calm before the storm. Emma spent the afternoon getting ready, curling her hair and applying her makeup like she didn't have a care in the world. She even threw on a red dress that I used to love, the one she hadn't worn for me in months. "Excited for tonight?" I asked, playing along. She gave me that fake, syrupy smile. "Of course, babe. It'll be nice to have some time together." I bit my tongue. Every word that came out of her mouth felt like a slap. But soon, her lies would catch up to her. The big reveal. We arrived at the restaurant and I acted like the doting husband. I pulled out her chair, complimented her dress, and ordered her favorite wine. She laughed and sipped it, completely unaware. And then, right on cue, Eric walked in. He looked smug, scanning the room for the woman who had so eagerly invited him. He was even wearing the damn blue shirt. But the second his eyes landed on me, his face dropped. Eric. Emma's voice cracked. What are you doing here? Eric, the moron, tried to play it off. I think there's been a mistake. I smiled. No mistake, buddy. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. I slapped it on the table right in front of Emma. Her eyes widened. You might want to flip through that, I said, keeping my voice calm. It's quite the scrapbook. All your little hotel rendezvous. The expensive dinners. The gifts. Oh, and the texts, very creative, by the way. She didn't move. Her hands trembled as she opened the folder, the color draining from her face. Eric stood frozen, his mouth slightly open like he couldn't decide whether to run or grovel. Emma stammered. I can explain. I leaned back, folding my arms. By all means, explain. But, of course, she had nothing. And I wasn't done. Did I mention I already spoke to a lawyer? I continued. And those charges you made on our joint account? Yeah, that's going to be fun to discuss in court. Adultery and financial fraud tend to look pretty bad. Eric shifted nervously, clearly realizing he had hitched his wagon to a sinking ship. This isn't my fault, he sputtered. She said you two were separated. Oh, really? I smirked. Well, that's news to me. Emma's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She knew she was trapped. Every lie she told was crumbling around her. And for once, she couldn't manipulate her way out. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Enjoy your dinner, I said, tossing a few bills on the table. You two deserve each other. And just like that, I walked out. The satisfaction? It was temporary. The pain? That would linger. But at least now I was done being the fool. Part 7. The Aftermath. After I walked out of that restaurant, the rush of adrenaline started to wear off. The satisfaction of watching Emma squirm and Eric panic had been undeniable, but once I was alone, the weight of it all hit me like a freight train. My wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for 7 years, wasn't just a cheater. She was a liar. A manipulator. Someone who could look me in the eyes every day and pretend everything was fine. I drove around aimlessly for a while, the streets blurring past me. I didn't want to go home. Not to the house we had built together. The thought of seeing her things, her clothes, that damn perfume she had bought for him, it made me sick. But eventually, I had to face it. The confrontation part 2. When I got home, Emma was already there. She must have left the restaurant not long after I did. Her car was parked in the driveway and the lights were on. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for whatever storm was waiting inside. The second I walked through the door, she pounced. You humiliated me, she screamed, her voice trembling. In front of everyone. Do you have any idea how that felt? I laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm sorry, Emma. Were you embarrassed? That must be so hard for you. She flinched. I made a mistake. A mistake. I shot back. A mistake is forgetting our anniversary. A mistake is leaving the stove on. You didn't make a mistake, Emma. You made a choice. Over and over again. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't buying it. Not this time. She had weaponized those tears for years, always using them to deflect and manipulate. Please, we can fix this, she sobbed. I'll do therapy. We can go to counseling. I wasn't thinking clearly. Oh, you were thinking clearly enough to book hotel rooms, I snapped. You were thinking clearly enough to sneak around and lie to my face. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. And then came the excuses. It didn't mean anything, she wailed. Eric, he made me feel special. Like I mattered. You've been so distant lately. That was the one that almost made me laugh. I had been distant? After all the times I tried to talk to her? The times I reached out trying to figure out what was wrong, only for her to shut me down? You're unbelievable, I said. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm done. Her face crumpled. No, you can't just walk away. We're married. Not anymore. I didn't stick around for more tears or pleading. I grabbed a bag, stuffed it with whatever I could find, and walked out the door. The house could be hers for now, I didn't care. I just needed space. The fallout. The next few days were a blur. I stayed with a buddy who offered me his spare room. He'd gone through a rough divorce a couple of years ago, so he understood what I was dealing with. We stayed up late, drank too much whiskey, and played video games like we were 20 again. It didn't fix anything, but it numbed the pain for a while. Emma, on the other hand, blew up my phone. I blocked her. Then she started emailing. Long, rambling apologies. Promises to change. Accusations that I was giving up too easily. Then came the guilt trips. You said you'd always love me. We vowed to work through anything. You're really going to throw away everything we built? I ignored every single one. But what really surprised me was Eric. The idiot actually had the audacity to call me. I didn't answer the first couple of times, but eventually curiosity got the better of me. What the hell do you want? I growled when I finally picked up. I didn't know she was lying, he stammered. She told me you guys were separated. I swear, man. If I'd known. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the photos. The texts. The smug way he laughed with her behind my back. You knew exactly what you were doing, I said coldly. And now you get to deal with the mess you helped create. Good luck. I hung up. I didn't need to hear any more. The legal battle. My lawyer was a godsend. She didn't just guide me through the divorce process, she made sure Emma didn't walk away with a single cent she didn't deserve. Adultery has a funny way of swaying judges, especially when there's hard evidence. The financial records I collected? Solid gold. Every dollar she spent on her little love affair was accounted for. My lawyer filed for divorce, citing infidelity and financial misconduct. Emma tried to contest it at first, but once she realized how stacked the evidence was, she caved. We split the house, I didn't want it anyway. She kept her car, I kept mine. And the joint accounts? Frozen. She had to pay back every penny she spent on Eric. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. The emotional wreckage. You'd think I'd feel relief once the papers were signed. And yeah, part of me did. But the truth is, the betrayal still lingers. Even now, I catch myself thinking back to the good times, wondering when exactly it all started to crumble. Was there something I missed? Was there a moment where I could have stopped it? But that's the thing about cheaters. They make you question yourself, when the only person who deserves to feel that doubt is them. I've started therapy and it's been helping. The anger isn't as sharp. The self-blame is slowly fading. And for the first time in months, I'm beginning to feel like me again. Advice to others. If you're reading this and something feels off in your relationship, trust your gut. I ignored mine for far too long. Love can blind you, but the truth always has a way of surfacing. And when it does, don't waste your energy trying to understand the cheater. Don't cling to the fantasy of who they used to be. They made their choice. Now it's your turn to make yours. You deserve better. And I promise one day you'll find it. Part 8. The healing process. After the divorce was finalized, I thought I'd feel a sense of closure. And in some ways I did. But what no one tells you about the aftermath of betrayal is how it lingers. The anger fades. The shock wears off. But the echoes? They stay. For weeks, I found myself going through the motions. Wake up. Go to work. Come home. Repeat. I stopped answering Emma's emails, blocked her number completely, and avoided any places where I might run into her. But even with her physically gone, she still lived rent-free in my mind. The memories were the worst. Every happy moment we had, every trip, every anniversary, every inside joke, felt tainted. Was she thinking of him back then? Was it all a lie? I'd hear a song we used to listen to or catch the scent of her old perfume on someone else, and it would hit me like a punch to the gut. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not anymore. Therapy. The lifeline I didn't know I needed. After a particularly rough night where I may or may not have demolished a bottle of whiskey by myself, I finally took my friend's advice and found a therapist. I won't lie, I was skeptical at first. The whole talk about your feelings thing didn't exactly appeal to me. But it saved me. My therapist was blunt, which I appreciated. She didn't let me wallow in self-pity or spiral into thoughts of what if. Instead, she helped me unpack everything. Not just the betrayal, but the deeper stuff. The fear of failure. The shame. The belief that I somehow wasn't enough for Emma. And slowly, I started to see it for what it was. Her affair wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of hers. She made the choice to cheat, to lie, to betray. That had nothing to do with me. That realization was like a weight lifting off my chest, reclaiming my space. One of the first things I did after the divorce was move out of that house. It wasn't a home anymore, just a graveyard of broken memories. Every room had a ghost. The couch where we'd binge-watch our favorite shows. The kitchen where she once made me breakfast just because. Even the bed. God, especially the bed. I rented a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No shared furniture. No lingering sense of her perfume. Just clean, empty space. And I made it mine. I painted the walls. Bought new furniture. Put up art that I actually liked. Not the tasteful decor Emma insisted on. It was therapeutic. A physical representation of the fresh start I so desperately needed. Rebuilding friendships. I also reconnected with friends. During my marriage, I hadn't realized how much I'd isolated myself. Emma always made it seem like it was just easier to stay in, or that she didn't vibe with certain people. Turns out that was just another layer of control. When I reached out, my friends welcomed me back with open arms. No judgment, just genuine support. My buddy Dan dragged me to game nights. Sarah, the same Sarah Emma used as her alibi, invited me to brunch with her group. They reminded me that I wasn't alone. And slowly I started to believe it. The unexpected apology. About 2 months after the divorce, I got an email from Eric. At first, I almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity got the better of me. The subject line? I'm sorry. The email itself was long, rambling even. He apologized profusely, swearing he had no idea the full extent of Emma's lies. According to him, she spun this whole sob story about how I was emotionally distant, neglectful, even borderline abusive. She told me you didn't care about her anymore, he wrote, that you were practically roommates. I laughed bitterly. That woman could spin a narrative better than a damn novelist. Eric claimed he broke things off with her not long after the restaurant incident. Apparently, the reality of her manipulation hit him like a ton of bricks once he saw how easily she threw him under the bus. He said he regretted everything. Did I forgive him? No. But I didn't hate him either. He wasn't innocent, but he wasn't the one who stood at the altar and made vows to me. That was Emma's betrayal alone. I responded with a simple line. Thanks for the apology. I hope you learned something from all this. And that was the last I ever heard from him. Emma's last attempt. Of course, it wasn't over with Emma. She made one final attempt to crawl back. She showed up at my apartment one afternoon, unannounced. I opened the door to see her standing there, makeup smeared, eyes puffy from crying. She looked nothing like the polished, put-together woman she used to be. I miss you, she whispered, tears welling up. We can fix this. I stood there, unmoved. We can't fix what you destroyed, Emma. She launched into the usual script, therapy, second chances, all the promises I'd already heard before. But this time I didn't engage. I didn't argue. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. You made your choice, I said firmly. Now you have to live with it. And I shut the door. Moving on. It's been several months now. I won't pretend I'm fully healed, that's a process that takes time. But every day it gets a little easier. I've started working out again. Picked up hobbies I had abandoned during the marriage. I even took a solo trip to the mountains, something I always wanted to do but never did because Emma wasn't into nature. Turns out I loved every second of it. And yeah, I've started dating. Nothing serious yet, but it's been refreshing. Being with people who don't lie. Who laugh without pretense. Who actually see me. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. If anything, I'm grateful. Emma's betrayal forced me to rebuild, but this time, I'm building for myself. Final thoughts. If you've made it this far, here's my advice. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't gaslight yourself the way a cheater will try to. Gather evidence. Not for revenge, but for protection. The truth is your strongest weapon. Know your worth. You are not defined by someone else's choices. Their betrayal is not a reflection of your value. Don't be afraid to walk away. Leaving is painful, but staying in a toxic situation will destroy you. Heal on your own terms. Therapy, hobbies, friends, whatever it takes. You owe it to yourself. And most importantly, never let someone make you believe you're not enough. Because you are. Part 9. rediscovering myself. After shutting the door on Emma for good, I realized how much of myself I had lost over the years. When you're in a toxic relationship, especially one where your partner is manipulating and deceiving you, it's easy to shrink without even noticing it. I spent so much time trying to be the perfect husband that I forgot what it was like to be me. So, I started small, reclaiming my space. The apartment became more than just a temporary crash pad. It was a blank canvas, one I could finally fill with pieces of myself. I ditched the soulless beige decor Emma always insisted on and started filling the place with things that brought me joy. A massive bookshelf took up one wall, stacked with every book I'd been meaning to read but never had time for. I bought a record player and a few vinyl albums, no more pretending to enjoy whatever trendy music Emma dictated. And I finally hung up those goofy travel photos my buddy Dan and I took years ago. Emma hated them. I loved them. It felt good. It felt like me. Getting back to hobbies. Before the marriage, I was a pretty avid runner. Nothing extreme, just enough to clear my mind. But somewhere along the line, I stopped. Emma always complained that I was wasting time when I could be home helping her with whatever minor inconvenience had ruined her day. Yeah? I ran whenever I wanted. Early mornings along the river. Late-night jogs through the empty streets. It wasn't just exercise, it was freedom. Every step felt like I was shedding the weight of her betrayal. I also picked up guitar again. Emma always called it pointless since I never played for anyone. But who cares? Strumming those strings, losing myself in the sound, that was for me. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Rebuilding relationships. One of the hardest things about the affair was realizing how isolated I'd become. Emma's constant need for control had gradually chipped away at my friendships. She'd always find reasons not to hang out with my friends. I don't like them, they're immature, we're too busy. And I went along with it, not realizing how much I was sacrificing. But once the dust settled, I reached out. Dan was the first to respond, no surprise there. He greeted me with a beer and a sarcastic, "Took you long enough." We picked up right where we left off, and it felt like I'd woken up from a long sleep. Sarah, on the other hand, apologized profusely. She admitted she should have spoken up earlier when she noticed Emma's lies, but I didn't hold it against her. She wasn't the one who betrayed me. We even joked about how she deserved an award for Best Unwilling Alibi. The truth is, real friends don't abandon you even when you've drifted. And damn, I'm lucky to have them. Facing the loneliness. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still nights when the silence felt unbearable. No matter how much I filled my days with running, music, and friends, the emptiness would creep in. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, half expecting a text from Emma, only to remember she was gone. Grief is weird like that. Even when you know someone isn't good for you, the loss still hurts. I wasn't mourning the real Emma, I was mourning the version of her I thought existed. The one who laughed at my dumb jokes and danced in the kitchen. The one who held my hand when my dad was in the hospital. But that version of her? She wasn't real. The hardest part of healing was accepting that. The first date. Eventually, I did what everyone said I should. I tried dating. I didn't jump into anything serious. The thought of committing to someone again made my stomach churn. But I wasn't going to let Emma's betrayal define the rest of my life. My first date was awkward. Nice woman, good conversation, but the chemistry just wasn't there. And that was okay. Not every date had to be the one. Sometimes it was just about putting yourself out there. Then I met Lena. She wasn't flashy or overly polished. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. We met through a mutual friend, and what was supposed to be a casual coffee date turned into a 3-hour conversation. We laughed. A lot. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like I was performing. Lena didn't pry about the divorce. She listened when I wanted to talk but never pushed. And maybe that's what I needed most, someone who saw me for who I was now, not who I had been with Emma. We're not rushing anything. I'm still figuring myself out. But for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about what's next. A final encounter. A few weeks ago, I ran into Emma. It wasn't planned, just one of those cruel coincidences. I was grabbing groceries when I saw her down the aisle. She looked different. Not in the dramatic "I've changed" way. Just smaller. Less sure of herself. She saw me too. And for a moment, I thought she might approach. But she didn't. She just gave me a small, weak smile and turned away. And you know what? I didn't feel anger. Or sadness. Or even regret. I just felt free. She made her choices. And I made mine. Final thoughts. If you're going through something similar, if you're sitting in that pit of betrayal, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, I promise you, you will. It won't be easy. Some days will feel unbearable. But each step forward, no matter how small, will bring you closer to yourself. And when you finally reach that place of peace, you'll realize something incredible. The person who came out of this? They're stronger, wiser, and so much more resilient than you ever thought possible. You're not broken. You're rebuilding. And that's a damn beautiful thing. Part 10. Life After Healing. It's strange how time works. One moment you're convinced the pain will last forever, and then, slowly, it doesn't. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no big, dramatic moment of clarity. But one day, you wake up and the weight isn't quite as heavy. That's where I am now. It's been almost a year since I walked out of that restaurant. A year since I looked into Emma's eyes and saw her for what she really was. In that time, I've learned more about myself than I ever thought possible. Not just as the guy whose wife cheated, but as someone who survived it. Someone who grew from it. And most importantly, someone who refused to let it define him. Career growth. One of the unexpected silver linings of the whole ordeal was how much energy I poured into my career. I'd always been decent at my job, but during my marriage, I stayed comfortable. Emma hated when I worked late or took on extra projects. She guilt-tripped me for not spending enough time with her. Yeah? No more guilt. I started volunteering for leadership roles, pushing myself out of my comfort zone. A few months ago, I landed a promotion. It wasn't just about the title or the paycheck, it was about reclaiming that part of myself that had been stifled. The part that wanted to grow. And the best part? I did it all without anyone trying to hold me back. Strengthening friendships. I also doubled down on my friendships. Dan's become like a brother to me. We've taken a couple of weekend trips, just two guys hiking, fishing, and reminding ourselves that life doesn't have to be so damn complicated. Sarah, too, has been a constant presence. It's funny how people show up when you need them most. I never blamed her for getting dragged into Emma's web of lies. In fact, her support has been invaluable. She even joked that if I ever get back into dating seriously, she's screening all potential candidates. Honestly, I might take her up on that. Lena and letting love back in. Speaking of dating, things with Lena have been good. Really good. We're not rushing. There are no unrealistic expectations. She knows about what happened with Emma, but it's not the centerpiece of our relationship. With Lena, I don't feel like I have to pretend. There's no performance. Just comfort. And for the first time, I'm realizing that love doesn't have to feel like a constant battle. It doesn't have to be dramatic or chaotic to be real. Sometimes it's just two people who genuinely enjoy being together. And that's enough. Forgiveness and closure. Now, about forgiveness, people always say it's something you do for yourself, not for the other person. I used to think that was bullshit. How could I forgive someone who tore my life apart without a second thought? But forgiveness doesn't mean I approve of what Emma did. It doesn't mean I'd ever take her back. It means I refuse to let her choices control me. I let go of the bitterness. Not because she deserved it, but because I did. Eric? I don't think about him much. He was just a symptom of a bigger problem, one that Emma created. From what I've heard through the grapevine, things didn't exactly work out between them. Shocking, right? Apparently, liars don't make the best partners. But that's not my burden to carry anymore. Advice to others. If you're reading this because you're going through something similar, I won't sugarcoat it. It's going to hurt. Some days will feel unbearable. You'll question everything, yourself, your worth, your judgment. But here's the thing, you're going to survive. And not just survive, you're going to thrive. Here's what I've learned. Feel it all. Don't suppress the anger, the sadness, or the confusion. Let yourself grieve. It's part of the process. Lean on your people. Even if you feel ashamed or embarrassed, reach out. The people who love you won't judge you. They'll carry you when you can't carry yourself. Get help if you need it. Therapy saved me. Having someone unbiased to talk to made all the difference. Don't rush to forgive. Forgiveness will come when you're ready. And sometimes forgiving yourself is the hardest part. Build a life you love. Do the things you couldn't do before. Travel. Take that class. Go on spontaneous adventures. Reclaim your joy. And most importantly, never let someone else's betrayal make you forget your worth. You are not the mistake they made. You are not the lies they told. You are not broken. You're resilient. And if I can come out the other side, I promise, so can you. Part 11, Reflections and Moving Forward. It's been about a year since the divorce was finalized. A year since I stood in that restaurant watching the facade Emma carefully built crumble right in front of her. I thought that moment would haunt me. I thought it would be the image that stuck with me forever. But it's not. The memories that linger now are the ones I've chosen, the nights spent laughing with friends, the early morning runs with nothing but the sound of my feet hitting the pavement, the quiet moments of peace in my own space. That's what I carry with me. But I'd be lying if I said I don't think about Emma at all. Every once in a while, something will remind me of her. A song on the radio. A scent in the air. Even small, stupid things like finding an old coffee mug she gave me on my birthday years ago. The memories don't hurt as much now, but they still exist. And I think that's okay. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about making peace with it. What I learned about love. The thing about being cheated on is that it forces you to rethink everything you believed about love. I used to think love was about compromise, about sacrificing pieces of yourself for the good of the relationship. But now I know better. Love isn't supposed to feel like a constant battle for validation. It's not about proving your worth over and over again. Real love is reciprocal. It's kind. It's honest. It builds you up instead of tearing you down. And most importantly, real love doesn't make you question yourself. Lena has shown me that. Not with grand gestures or empty words, but with the small, steady presence she offers every day. I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I don't feel like I have to shrink myself to make her comfortable. I'm just me. And that's enough. I'm not saying she's the one. I don't know what the future holds. But for now she makes me happy. And that's all I could ask for. Forgiveness and letting go. People often ask if I've forgiven Emma. And the truth is I have. Not because she apologized, she never really did, not in any meaningful way. But because I refused to let her betrayal control me any longer. Forgiveness for me wasn't about excusing what she did. It was about accepting that I'll never get the answers I wanted. There's no justification that would make it okay. And even if she woke up tomorrow and truly regretted everything, it wouldn't change the damage she caused. But that's her burden to carry, not mine. And Eric? Honestly, I stopped caring. He was just a symptom of a bigger problem. If it hadn't been him, it would have been someone else. Men like him think they're winning when they steal someone's wife. But the reality? They're just inheriting someone else's problems. I'm free of that now. Rebuilding trust. The hardest part of moving on has been learning how to trust again. It's not just about trusting other people, it's about trusting myself. When you've been lied to so thoroughly, you start to question your own judgment. How did I not see the signs? Why did I ignore the red flags? Could I have prevented it? But through therapy, I've come to understand that trusting someone isn't a weakness. It's a strength. Loving someone enough to be vulnerable is brave even if it doesn't always end well. And just because one person shattered that trust doesn't mean the next one will. Advice for others. If you're reading this because you're in the middle of your own storm, I want you to know something. It won't always feel this way. Right now, it probably feels like the pain will consume you. Like the betrayal will define your entire existence. But one day, sooner than you think, you'll wake up and realize it doesn't. You'll smile without forcing it. You'll laugh without bitterness. You'll make plans for the future without that nagging voice in the back of your mind. But it takes work. Don't rush the healing. Feel everything. The anger, the sadness, the confusion, all of it. It's the only way to move through it. Lean on your people. Even if you feel embarrassed or ashamed, don't isolate yourself. Real friends will stand by you. Get professional support. Therapy isn't a sign of weakness. It's a lifeline. It saved me and it can save you too. Don't define yourself by their actions. You are not the person they betrayed. You are the person who survived it. Believe in better. Just because one person hurt you doesn't mean the world is full of people like them. There are good people out there. People who will love you the way you deserve. Looking ahead. These days I don't think about the past as much. Not because I've forgotten, but because I'm too busy living. I'm planning a trip to Italy next year, something I've always wanted to do but never did because Emma wasn't interested. I'm working on new projects at work. I've even joined a local running club. And Lena? She's still in the picture. We're taking things slow, but it feels good. Easy. Like I can finally breathe. For the first time in a long time, I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm not afraid. I'm free. And that, my friends, is the greatest revenge of all. Part 12. Final reflections and advice. It's hard to believe how much has changed in just 1 year. When I think back to the man who stood in that restaurant, watching his wife's affair crumble under the weight of the truth, it almost feels like I'm remembering someone else. That version of me, the one consumed by betrayal and heartbreak, was convinced he'd never get past it. But I did. I don't carry that pain with me anymore. Sure, the scars are still there, and they always will be. But they don't define me. They're a part of my story, not the whole thing. And the further I get from it, the more I realize how much stronger I've become. If you're reading this, there's a good chance you're somewhere in that storm. Maybe you just found out, and the world feels like it's crumbling around you. Maybe you're stuck in that endless loop of why and how. Maybe you're wondering if you'll ever feel normal again. I won't lie to you, it's going to hurt. There will be days when the anger is unbearable. Nights when the loneliness sinks its teeth into you. Moments when you'll wonder if you were ever truly loved. But those moments will pass. And when they do, you'll realize that you are so much more than what they did to you. The lessons I learned. I've had a lot of time to think about what I'd tell my past self. The one who was standing in the middle of the wreckage, wondering what the hell he was supposed to do next. If I could sit down with him, I'd say this: your worth isn't defined by their betrayal. They cheated because of their own flaws, not because of yours. Don't waste your energy trying to figure out what you could have done differently. The fault is entirely on them. Let yourself grieve. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel like the world is falling apart. You loved deeply, and losing that, even if it wasn't real, is a loss worth mourning. You don't owe them forgiveness. People will tell you to forgive and move on. But forgiveness is not a free pass. It's something you give when you're ready, not because someone demands it. And sometimes, forgiving yourself is far more important. Don't rush into anything. You'll feel the urge to fill the void. Maybe it's with another relationship. Maybe it's with work or distractions. But healing isn't something you can skip over. Sit with the pain. Let it teach you. Lean on your people. I can't stress this enough. Your friends, your family, they are your anchor. Even when it feels like you're burdening them, trust me, you're not. They want to be there for you. Let them. Take back control. The most empowering thing I did was take back my life. I made choices for myself. From the small things like decorating my apartment, to the big things like pursuing career goals. Every decision reminded me that I was no longer under her influence. Love isn't supposed to hurt. This one took me the longest to accept. Love isn't supposed to feel like a battlefield. If you're constantly begging for scraps of affection, that's not love, that's manipulation. When real love finds you, you'll know. It will feel easy, safe, whole. For those struggling to move on. If you're still in that dark place, I want you to know something. You're not weak. You're not pathetic. And you're definitely not alone. It took me months to stop blaming myself. To stop reliving every fight, every missed sign, every moment I could have fixed things. But the truth is, the relationship wasn't broken because of you. It was broken because of the choices they made. You gave them loyalty, trust, and love. And they threw it away. That's not your failure, it's theirs. But you have the power to rebuild. Maybe not today. Maybe not even tomorrow. But one day you'll wake up and realize that the weight is lighter. The memories will dull. The anger will fade. And in its place, there will be something else. Hope. The future I never expected. Lena and I are still taking things slow. I'm not naive, I know the damage Emma caused left marks. But instead of letting those scars keep me guarded, I'm using them as reminders of what I deserve. And honestly, it's been freeing. There's no constant anxiety about being lied to. No overthinking every glance at a phone. No twisting my words to avoid setting her off. With Lena, I feel calm. And that calm feels like the biggest victory of all. I don't know what the future holds for us. And for once, I'm okay with that. Because I'm not chasing closure anymore. I don't need it. The closure came when I stopped looking for answers and started living for myself. Final words of advice. To anyone who's still hurting, I see you. I know how impossible it feels right now. But I promise you will make it through this. Be patient with yourself. Healing isn't linear. Some days will be harder than others. That's okay. Don't let their actions steal your joy. They took enough. Reclaim your happiness piece by piece. Know when to ask for help. Therapy saved me. It can save you too. Remember that this isn't the end. Life goes on. And sometimes the best chapters come after the worst ones. You're stronger than you know. And one day you'll look back at all of this, the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and you'll realize that it didn't break you. It rebuilt you. And that's something no one can ever take away. Part 13, Building a New Future. After everything that happened, I've learned that the future isn't something you wait for, it's something you build. And once I stopped living under the shadow of my past, I realized how much potential was still ahead of me. I won't pretend it was easy. There were plenty of moments when I felt stuck, like I wasn't moving fast enough or healing the right way. But healing doesn't follow a schedule. It happens in small, unnoticeable ways. And before you know it, you're miles from where you started. Here's how I began building the future I wanted, a future without her. Taking control of my space. The apartment that once felt like a temporary shelter has truly become my home. Every piece of furniture, every framed photo, every book on the shelf reflects me. I even started taking care of a few houseplants. Turns out I'm not half bad at keeping things alive, ironic considering how lifeless I felt when I first moved in. I also created a small workspace for hobbies. The guitar I'd neglected during my marriage is now something I play daily. I'm not a rock star, but that's not the point. It's for me, a reminder that I'm allowed to enjoy things simply because they make me happy. And the bed? The one I used to dread going to alone? Now it's my sanctuary. There's nothing like stretching out across the entire mattress, knowing I'm not sharing it with someone who doesn't deserve my trust. Traveling on my own terms. One of the biggest regrets I had during my marriage was how often I put my own desires on hold. Emma always had excuses: too busy, too tired, not interested. And I let that stop me. Not anymore. A few months ago, I booked a solo trip to Italy. It was something I'd talked about for years but never did because Emma wasn't a fan of foreign travel. Turns out I am. I walked through the streets of Rome, ate my weight in pasta, and drank wine on a balcony overlooking the Tuscan hills. I didn't rush. I didn't check my phone. I simply existed. And it was perfect. Traveling alone taught me something important. I'm fully capable of making memories without anyone else by my side. Happiness doesn't depend on having a partner, it's something you create for yourself. Career growth and confidence. With the emotional fog lifted, I poured myself into work. Not as a distraction, but because I finally had the mental energy to focus. I took on projects I'd been hesitant about before. I spoke up in meetings. I even mentored some junior employees, which I never would have had the confidence to do a year ago. That promotion I mentioned? It was well-earned. And the financial freedom it brought meant I could start planning even more adventures. But beyond the money and titles, I rediscovered my confidence. Emma used to make me feel small, like my dreams were a burden. Now, I know better. My ambitions are valid. And I refuse to dim my own light for someone else's comfort ever again. Relationships and healthy boundaries. As for my personal relationships, things have changed a lot. I'm still with Lena, and while it's not a fairy tale romance, it's something real. She understands that I'm still healing. She doesn't expect me to pretend the scars aren't there. And that level of patience and kindness? It's something I never realized I was missing before. But I also learned that not every relationship has to be romantic. My friendships are stronger than ever. Dan and I have made it a tradition to grab beers every Friday night. Sarah remains one of my closest confidants. And I even reconnected with a few old college buddies. Building these connections reminded me that love exists in so many forms, not just the kind that involves vows and rings. Embracing therapy and self-work. I still go to therapy, though not as often. What started as a lifeline has become something I genuinely enjoy. My therapist once told me healing isn't about removing the memories, it's about changing the way they live inside you. And she was right. I no longer replay the betrayal in my head like a broken record. When the memories do pop up, they don't hit as hard. They're just memories. Fragments of a past that no longer holds power over me. I've also worked on my self-worth. I don't need external validation to feel whole. I know what I bring to the table: loyalty, kindness, resilience. And if someone can't see that, that's their loss, not mine. Giving back. Surprisingly, one of the most fulfilling parts of this journey has been helping others. I joined an online support group for people going through infidelity and divorce. Sharing my story and offering advice has reminded me how far I've come. If my experience can help even one person feel a little less alone, then it wasn't all for nothing. Looking forward. So, what's next for me? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. And that's okay. I know I want to keep traveling. Greece is next on the list. I'm considering taking cooking classes just for fun. And Lena and I have talked about maybe getting a dog. Nothing's set in stone, but for the first time, that uncertainty feels exciting instead of terrifying. I'm not the man I was before all of this. And I'm not the man who stood in that restaurant, burning with anger and humiliation. I'm something else entirely. I'm free. And that's a future worth building. Part 14. Final thoughts and words of encouragement. It's strange to think about how far I've come. A year ago, I was consumed by betrayal and heartbreak. Every waking moment was a battle against the thoughts in my head. The what-ifs, the regrets, the unbearable ache of knowing the person I trusted most had shattered everything we built. But now I stand on the other side of it. I'm not the same man who sat alone in that empty apartment, surrounded by the echoes of a broken marriage. I'm not the man who begged for answers that would never satisfy me. I'm someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who learned how to heal even when it felt impossible. And if you're reading this, if you're in the middle of your own storm, I want you to know that this isn't the end for you either. It might feel like it is. I know how heavy that feeling can be, but I promise you, there is life on the other side of betrayal. Not just survival, not just existing, but real, genuine life, the power of letting go. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn was how to let go. Not just of Emma, though that was part of it. I had to let go of the anger that threatened to consume me, the resentment that whispered, "She doesn't deserve to be happy," the shame that made me question if I was somehow to blame. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means choosing not to carry the weight of it anymore. Emma may never understand the damage she caused. Eric may never feel the consequences of his choices. And that used to infuriate me. But I realized that holding on to that anger only hurt me. So I let it go. And with that space cleared, I made room for joy. Healing isn't linear. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's that healing isn't a straight path. There were days I thought I was over it, only to be blindsided by a memory that knocked the wind out of me. That's normal. You'll have moments when the anger flares up again, when the sadness creeps in, when you wonder if you'll ever feel truly whole. But every time you pick yourself back up, you grow a little stronger. Eventually, those moments become fewer and farther between. And one day, you'll realize it's been weeks since you thought about them, then months. And it won't feel like a victory you need to announce. It will just feel peaceful. Choosing yourself. One of the most powerful things I did after the divorce was start choosing myself. Emma spent years making me feel like my needs were secondary. Every decision, every plan revolved around what she wanted. I sacrificed so much of myself trying to keep her happy. And in the end, it wasn't enough. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for someone else's happiness. Your needs matter. Your dreams matter. Your peace matters. And if someone can't see that, they have no business being in your life. Choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole. It's okay to love again. After betrayal, the thought of loving someone new can feel impossible. For a while, I convinced myself I'd never trust anyone again. I built walls around my heart, convinced they would keep me safe. But love isn't the enemy. What Emma did wasn't a reflection of love. It was a reflection of her. And just because she failed to honor our vows doesn't mean love itself is flawed. Lena taught me that. She didn't fix me. That's not her job. But she showed me that trust can be rebuilt. That laughter can come easily again. That vulnerability doesn't have to feel like a risk. And if I can open my heart again, I know you can too. My advice to you, if you're still standing in the rubble of your relationship, here's what I tell you. Give yourself time. Healing isn't something you rush. Feel every emotion, the anger, the grief, the confusion. It's all part of the process. Lean on your support system. You don't have to go through this alone. Friends, family, therapists, they're your lifeline. Let them in. Don't seek closure from your ex. Closure doesn't come from a perfect apology or a neat explanation. It comes from accepting the truth and deciding to move forward anyway. Invest in yourself. Rediscover your passions. Try new things. Travel. Learn. Build a life that brings you joy, even if you're doing it alone. Know your worth. You are not defined by their betrayal. You are not unlovable or not enough. You are worthy of a love that is honest, respectful, and kind. Forgive for yourself, not for them. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning what they did. It means refusing to let their actions control your happiness any longer. Believe in better. Just because they hurt you doesn't mean everyone will. The right person won't make you question your worth. They'll remind you of it. The future is yours. I won't pretend I have everything figured out. There are still moments when the memories creep in, but they no longer hold power over me. I've rebuilt my life from the ground up, and this time it's a life I'm proud of. A life that's mine. Lena and I are planning a trip to Greece soon. My career is thriving. My friendships are stronger than ever. And for the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely excited about the future. That's the thing about heartbreak, it strips you down, yes. But it also gives you the opportunity to rebuild. And when you rebuild, you get to decide what your life looks like. So take your time. Heal at your own pace. And when you're ready, step forward. Because I promise you, there's a whole world waiting for you on the other side of this. And it's more beautiful than you could ever imagine. Part 15, a message to my past self. If I could go back, if I could stand face to face with the man I was on that terrible night, I know exactly what I'd say. I'd find him sitting in that darkened room, staring at the walls like they might somehow provide answers. The weight of betrayal sitting on his chest, crushing him. The thoughts running endlessly, how could she? Why didn't I see it? Was it my fault? He wouldn't recognize me. Not yet. But I'd sit down next to him and I'd tell him this. I know it hurts. And I know it feels unbearable. But I need you to listen to me. You think this pain will consume you. You think it will break you. But it won't. Right now, it feels like your whole life just went up in flames. And in a way, it did. The future you thought you were building? Gone. The person you trusted with your heart? She threw it away without a second thought. And that betrayal? It's going to burn. But here's the thing about fires, they clear the way for something new. I know you don't believe me yet. That's okay. You'll curse the memories. You'll feel the ache of every "I love you" she whispered when it was all a lie. You'll hate her. Then miss her. Then hate yourself for missing her. But one day, that storm will pass. There will come a morning when you wake up and the first thought you have won't be about her. You won't check your phone, hoping for some kind of apology that will never come. You won't relive that night in your head over and over. You'll just wake up. And the weight will be lighter. You will rebuild. You'll find laughter again, the kind that makes your stomach hurt and tears run down your face. You'll remember what it feels like to look in the mirror and actually like the person staring back. You'll go on long walks with no destination, and for once, it won't be to escape the thoughts in your head. You'll stand on mountaintops. Eat meals that make you close your eyes in satisfaction. Listen to music that shakes your soul. And none of it will be because of her. It'll be because of you. And the best part? You'll love again. Asterisk, asterisk. Not right away. Not the way you thought you would. But when you do, it will be different. It will be calm. Steady. Safe. There will be no knots in your stomach, no second-guessing every smile or late-night phone call. You'll be with someone who chooses you every single day, not because they have to, but because they want to. And you'll realize that this is what love is supposed to feel like. But before that, you're going to learn how to choose yourself. Asterisk, asterisk. No more shrinking yourself to make someone else comfortable. No more sacrificing your joy just to keep the peace. You'll learn how to say no without guilt. How to chase your dreams without permission. How to stand tall even when the memories threaten to drag you down. You'll become someone that past you could never imagine, not because the betrayal didn't hurt, but because it did. And you survived it. You will survive this. And one day, not too long from now, you'll sit across from someone who makes you laugh until your cheeks hurt. You'll tell them about the mountains you've climbed, the places you've seen, the songs that never fail to make you smile. And when they ask about her, about the woman who tried to break you, you'll shrug. You'll smile. And you'll say, that's just a part of my story. Because that's all it will be. A part, not the whole. You've got so much more ahead of you. So stand up. Breathe. Let the pain in and then let it go. Your story isn't over. It's only just beginning.